One of the questions we get asked periodically is about due diligence checklists. First, a little background. When you're selling your company, you go through a process of meeting people who are interested buyers, and eventually you'll get a term sheet. Once you have the term sheet, the buyer will want to conduct a very detailed analysis of the business, much more so than he's done prior to that. That usually takes the form of what's called a due diligence checklist. And this can be 10 to 30 pages of questions, oftentimes several hundred questions, that ask about every contract the company's had, all of your legal documentation, your employees, intellectual property, manufacturing processes, pretty much every question you could imagine about how the company has operated, the history of the company, and all the documents associated with the company in the past. While this is going on, the buyer typically has his law firm engaged with your law firm writing a contract that is negotiated to acquire the business. So due diligence checklists are fairly extensive lists of all the items any buyer would want to see and get into prior to acquiring the company to make sure that they're getting what they think they're getting and avoiding any liabilities that might exist that would cause problems for them in the future. We recommend that people not go and get too involved in trying to get all of the documentation in a due diligence checklist until they get to the term sheet stage. We mainly deal with smaller technology companies, 25 to several $100 million size transactions, and we find that most small companies don't have the staff to go after filling out all the information that's in a due diligence checklist until you're really committed to going through and selling the business, and that's usually at the stage when a term sheet happens. Bigger companies, multi-billion-dollar transactions, have staff, and they can go through a due diligence checklist, organize what's called a data room, put all the data in there and be prepared prior to the term sheet. But for the companies that we deal with, typical companies in the technology space, it's probably better to wait until you get to the term sheet stage and then commit to doing the due diligence and going through the due diligence checklist. If you're looking for a due diligence checklist, you can ask your law firms. You can give us a call. We're happy to provide one. They're usually tailored. They're very specific to the company being acquired. Some of the questions are common about the legal documentation of the company, but every company is different and the due diligence checklists are different. But we'd be happy to supply you with a typical due diligence checklist if you give us a call.